All right, Garrett, can you confirm you can see that?
Yep, I can indeed.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. Just brief introductions. My name is Garret Pearse. I'm head of pre-sales in SoftCo, been helping our customers automate their AP processes for more years than I care to remember. And Jason, if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hey everyone, my name is Jason Hery. I am on the pre-sales team here at SoftCo. Generally just working with customers on requirements and demonstrations and making sure that we understand exactly what their fit looks like as it relates to SoftCo solutions. So nice to see everyone.
Great. So just to talk a bit about what we're going to cover today, and we're going to try and keep it as concise. I think we're not looking to tell you everything or show you everything, but more to just give you some points to ponder and hopefully encourage some curiosity as to how we can help you with your particular AP challenges. But we'll be starting with just a very brief overview or explanation of what we see AP automation, invoice automation is. How does it work exactly? What are the moving parts, or what are the particular parts in the process where it helps you? And how does that make a difference? How does that help both the AP teams and the general business teams in your organization in general? So explaining a little bit about that for maybe organizations who are new to AP automation, or maybe ones who have semi-automation in their process, but they're looking to take advantage of the more powerful technologies and solutions that we have available to us now. We'll then illustrate what we've talked about with the demonstration of the SoftCo AP platform. So Jason will be leading a demonstration of that. And I think every discussion we have nowadays, AI comes into it at some point. So we just want to talk a little bit about how we use AI in SoftCo to help with our customers' AP automation challenges, how AI is very much key to any solution that we provide to our customers, and the areas where it helps, and the reasons we've used it in some ways rather than others, and the reasoning behind that. So at the end, you'll have an opportunity to ask questions. There's a question tab in the webinar controls, so do feel free to submit questions. I'm terrible at keeping an eye on those questions, but I will do my best, but we will certainly answer them at the very end if we don't answer them as we go along. Okay, so just in general, just going to talk a little bit about the different areas where AP automation helps. I think first of all is helping get your invoices in to your system. So many organizations we work with receive invoices in a variety of ways. It might be PDFs via email. It might be over invoicing networks such as PayPal, such as EDI. It might even be via a portal. So key to invoice automation is helping you with that, be able to automatically capture your incoming invoices however they're sent to your organization. So there's a number of areas of technology, what traditionally might have been called OCR, optical character recognition, which can read invoice data like the one that you see on the right-hand side of your screen there. Or there's data ingestion mappings that we can take the likes of EDIFACT formats, 810s from an EDI point of view, PayPal, UBL invoice formats. It's been able to make sure that the AP automation solution understands those structures and is able to take that data from the network or however it's being transmitted to you and then pass it into an automation platform to help validate and process that invoice. And that kind of leads us to the next part of the process. Once you have your invoice ingested into the system, it's been able to apply initial validations. Straight up, you want to check for any duplicates, make sure you haven't already received that same invoice from that vendor already, making sure that the vendor that it's been received, it appears to come from, that it's a valid vendor for your organization, mapping that using things like addresses, phone numbers, TINs, VAT numbers, etc. So being able to know that the invoice is going to end up being posted to the correct supplier account. So all of that can be done right at the front of the AP process. Jason, I don't know if I'm probably missing a couple there. If you have any more to add from an initial validation point of view.
Yeah, a couple more. So generally, we're also we're also going to look to validate the internal organization, so the bill to organization, if you will, that is on the invoice. Obviously, companies can have multiple bill tos and multiple internal organizations. Want to make sure we get that right, as well as just general data accuracy. So making sure that values and such add up. So making sure our line items make sense, that our quantities and unit prices and such add up to extended amounts, and things such as net amounts plus tax amounts and such add up to total amounts. So general data validation or accuracy, just to make sure that we have it right before we go on and start to do any other parts of the process, such as matching.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're looking to do, and again, this can all be automated with minimal touch in terms of get the invoice validated up front, and then once you have that information from the invoice, who it's from, what it's for, is it a purchase order invoice, is it a non-purchase order invoice, and by sending it to the correct workflow stream, there's a number of things we can then do. So for example, if it's a purchase order related invoice, if your organization is generating purchase orders, maybe from the likes of an ERP or from a procurement system, what we want to be able to do is when we get an invoice referencing that purchase order or purchase orders is automate some of the or as much as possible of the validation of the invoice. Starting off with some very basic checks is, if it's a three-way match purchase order, is there a goods receipt in place? There's countless AP departments that I've met with where one of the biggest thieves of their time is receiving an invoice that's got to them before the goods receipt has been done in the ERP. So they'll go into their platform, they'll look to post the invoice, and they'll realize that they can't process the invoice because there's no goods receipt in place, and then they're immediately on the back foot trying to send out an email notification to somebody to go and do the goods receipt or confirm if the goods have been received. So that can be a serious commitment from a manual processing point of view that we would look to remove with invoice automation. Then once those aspects are in place, it's been able to validate, is the price correct? Are we able to identify on a multi-line invoice what particular lines it relates to on a purchase order? We've seen all kinds of variations where you've got a purchase order with multiple products, multiple lines on it. You receive an invoice with a single line for the total amount. You might receive the opposite, where you've got one line on your purchase order, you get an invoice in with multiple lines. It's been able to allocate and match those invoice lines correctly to make sure that you're able to assess each invoice on its merits and make sure it's valid for your organization to go ahead and pay that. And that, depending on your particular industry, whether you're retail or manufacturing, will have certain challenges with regards to that matching process, as opposed to maybe a service-based industry where you're maybe working with blanket POs that you're drawing down from. So again, there's huge opportunities there to be able to automate that validation process. Jason, anything I'm missing there in terms of opportunities there for PO invoice matching and validation?
Not necessarily opportunities, but certainly something that we're seeing as part of that process. That's obviously a big talking point at this point, especially here at SoftCo, is the addition of AI as part of that process. So being able to use the data that is coming in and have the system learn and understand what is actually happening when it comes to aligning the data on the invoice with the purchase orders, with the goods receipts and things of that nature. Actually looking at patterns and being able to, in some capacity, predict what it's expecting to see, and then of course matching against what it is actually seeing. So the addition of AI in the SoftCo solution has been a game changer for sure. So that process is getting better and better as we progress.
Yep, great, thank you. Yeah, as you said, AI really underpins everything that we're looking to do these days. Yeah, and again, I guess if we move on to the next area in terms of non-PO processing, again, from an automation point of view, your non-purchase order invoices, there's obviously no purchase order to derive the coding or to validate from, but you've got your challenges. You need to assign the appropriate coding to the invoice. You need to get it routed to the appropriate approvers within your organization, and you need to make sure you're enforcing the appropriate chart of authority. So again, from an invoice automation point of view, those are key things where the technology, where the platform will step in and enable you to do all, if not a lot, if not all of those steps with minimal interaction required. So you're getting your invoices out to the business, ready coded, or helping the business code those invoices if it's your business users who are coding it, so that that can be approved and posted as quickly as possible. And again, one aspect of those non-PO invoices, again, where I think there's opportunities to take advantage of technology and the platform, is recurring invoices. Often when we look at the proportion of invoices in our customers that aren't purchase order related, there's still a predictability to them. They're still often received on a monthly basis for utilities and rent. So even though you might not issue a purchase order to your utility company, you still know you're going to get an invoice every month or every 2 months. And that gives you an opportunity to use things like invoice installment plans, where you can map out the frequency with which you're going to get invoiced, the approximate amount you're going to get invoiced, the coding that you would typically apply to those invoices. And with that installment plan in place, you can then automate the processing of those invoices. So every time your utility bill comes in, it goes, looks up what it was expecting to be billed for that particular period. Is it within that correct range? It can automatically apply the coding that you've pre-designated for that particular utility bill. If necessary, it can still reach out to a business user to confirm they're happy to pay, but that can ultimately get posted with minimal AP touch needed to get it posted, validated, and into your finance system ready to pay. So again, I think a huge opportunity there. Jason, I can probably guess where you think what you're going to say in terms of areas that really drive that process.
Yeah, of course it's AI. AI and machine learning is it's really big on the PO invoice matching side, but in some capacity, it's actually even more helpful on the non-PO processing side, because on this side, obviously, we don't have a purchase order to base anything on. So we're in some fashion more dependent on the system to actually recognize data, to actually see what has happened in the past, and then present the user with potential values and such for GL accounts and cost centers and things of that nature. So it is assisting in that process, is also assisting, of course, in the approval process. And then with the approval process, we're also going to send out emails and such to users so that they can complete the mobile approval process via their phones, via their laptop sitting at the airport, a tablet, whatever it might be. So yeah, you're right, Garrett. The AI is normally where I'm going to go with a lot of this stuff, just because it's such a big talking point at this point. But the mobile approval piece is obviously a big benefit to business users as they're on the go.
Yeah, great. Yeah, as I guessed, yeah, AI is really the driving force behind all of that, and it's leveraging the power that gives. And I think what kind of then ties it all together is the next part of it is being able to measure and maximize your key performance indicators. So that is, how long does an invoice take to go through my organization from when we receive it to when it's ready to pay? How much effort does it take to process that invoice? How many of them were touchlessly processed? How many of them were purchase order related versus ones that were maybe non-purchase order related? So in other words, how good are we complying with best practice that every invoice should ideally either refer to a PO or a contract or something like that? So by adopting or taking advantage of those 4 preceding points, it gives you the ability to properly measure and properly diagnose where there's opportunities for improvement. So what we see from an analytics point of view is identify not just your good performance, but where your performance is falling short, be it on a departmental level, be it on a vendor level, be it on a buyer level. And having the data to back up and identify those shortfalls is going to allow you to make the changes to improve the process and improve the metrics. And the final piece there is what really needs to tie it all together. And again, I kind of speak to it from a compliance point of view, from a risk point of view, from an audit point of view. All of the things above need to be in line with your audit requirements, with your legislative and regulatory requirements. And that again plays into how AI is used and how the technology is used in automating all of those key things you're looking to do. We'll talk a little bit at the end about how we use AI. AI is actually, it's kind of come to mean the likes of ChatGPT, where you can use these what are called large language models. You can type in a question or a set of prompts and it will come back with these amazing answers. But that's only one portion of AI, and it has its limitations as well, in that you're never quite sure, for example, in ChatGPT, how did it come up with the answer? What's the reason? And in the finance world, when you're matching an invoice or you're posting an invoice or doing something, you really do need to know what was the decision-making process, what was the boundaries within an invoice, within which an invoice was matched, or how it was approved, or how it was routed. So those need to be taken into account in the AI technology that's used to fix the particular challenges that you see above, and I'll talk a little bit about that at the end. I think other than that, I think it's probably time to hand over to Jason, where he's going to show you invoice automation in action using the SoftCo platform. And as I did said, I'll try and keep an eye out for any questions as we go, and we'll answer them. But do please feel free to ask questions in the chat window, in the questions window, as we go along. Jason, I think probably hand over to you to give us a quick demonstration of AP automation in action.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Garrett. So let's jump in, quickly walk through a process of sort of how all the pieces fit together, and then I will jump in and walk through several scenarios. So from a process standpoint, we're going to start with invoice capture, so invoice ingestion. So as Garrett was talking about previously, that point at which the invoices enter the solution. So whether that's coming from email or XML or some sort of vendor network or something like that, getting those invoices into the solution so that we can then do something with that invoice, whether it's match it, get it sent for approval, code a non-PO invoice properly, match it to a recurring invoice scenario, things of that nature. So invoice ingestion, invoice capture is that first step. So get the data that we need off of that invoice in question, reading that document, getting the invoice numbers and dates and things of that nature. Once we have that, we're going to then pass that on to the smart matching engine. We're going to synchronize the data from the ERP in to our matching engine, and then we're going to match. So we're going to match on the PO side, in many cases get an auto match and pass that over to the ERP. If it's not of a sufficient match, it's going to pass over here, end up in an exceptions queue, or be sent out to a user, assigned to a team, something like that, so that that invoice issue can be dealt with in some capacity. On the recurring side, so Garrett mentioned rent, Garrett mentioned utilities, things of that nature. That's where these come in. So these are recurring non-PO invoices that can be highly automated because they actually have something to match against. So we call these contracts in our system, but non-PO invoice comes in, it does have a supporting document to match against. Again, it's called a contract, and in many cases, those can be highly automated. On the more traditional non-PO side, we have smart coding and smart routing. So this is the system's ability to be able to assist you with the coding and routing process based on past invoices. So understanding how you coded and routed something previously, it will then start to plug in things based on what it knows and what it remembers from a previous example. Overarching in the solution, we mentioned AI. So in this case, machine learning is being used to assist with the ongoing matching of PO-based invoices, as well as the learning as it relates to smart coding and smart routing of non-PO invoices. So that will all be plugged back in to the matching engine to get us the highest level of success possible. Moving on from there, once we have dealt with any exceptions, we're going to pass that over to the ERP. We're going to store that in a compliant archive on the back end of our solution for long-term storage and, of course, retrieval. And then finally, we can also assist with the payment process if that's ever of interest. So let's jump into the solution. Let me get this on the right screen here. Okay, so we will start. I'll start just by saying that our solution is web-based, fully web-based, supported, of course, installed, everything by us, by our teams, and upgraded by us long-term. Nothing you have to do there. We do, of course, support single sign-on. So long-term, as you implement things, you're able to integrate with your single sign-on provider so that your users aren't having to log in multiple times to multiple different systems. A couple of dashboards I'd like to show you. So operations dashboard. When we're talking about visibility, when we're talking about being able to see what is actually happening for our invoice processing, we're able to see here how many invoices we have in the system, and then of course where they stand in the AP process. We're also able to see the number of invoices coming up in a few days or a few weeks, as well as any discount opportunities that might be available. Over on our finance dashboard, this will be more around amounts and such. So what is the value of our invoices coming up here in the next few days or few weeks? Our top suppliers, as well as our cash flow broken out by currency. So if you are dealing in multi-currency, you're able to see that broken out here at the bottom. That's our dashboards. This is sort of your live data, if you will. Over on the analytics side, this is going to be more trend analysis type things. So in the case of the operations analytics, we're looking at the typical processing time here in our summary tab, giving us an idea of how long it is taking us to process an invoice. What does that look like over the past 12 months? Are we getting better? Are we getting worse? And then some additional data down here at the bottom based on suppliers. So who are our top suppliers as it relates to processing time, or worst suppliers for that matter. Each of these has a summary tab followed by some breakout tabs. I won't get into each one, but just to give you an idea of what this layout looks like. Finance analytics, this is going to be more around KPIs, so our spend by volume and value, paid on time by volume and value. So again, overview or summary tab with some breakouts so we can see paid on time details and things of that nature. And then our AP metrics. So this will give you an idea of what you're looking at from a straight through processing standpoint, as well as more detailed information. So in this case, 82% straight through, which is not being touched by anyone. What are our exceptions looking like? We can look at our coding on our non-PO invoices, as well as our approvals on our non-PO invoices. We can look in more detail at our straight through processing data. So a lot of different information here. I want to make sure that from a visibility, from KPIs, from a compliance standpoint, that you're able to see exactly what is going on with your system. So I'll start in the AP automation tab here. I won't get into capture on this demo, but just know that prior to this step, the invoices will come in. They will come in via a mailbox or some other means, and we will get the data off the invoice in question. Once that happens, it will be passed to this step so that we can then do something with that. Just a little about the user interface. Top left here, this is our favorites. So this allows you to configure your views so that you see the invoices that are of interest to you, and any user can do that based on their access. The bottom left here, I like to call this the working section. So this AP task will give you the ability to see certain invoice types. Monitoring will give you the ability to monitor the system in some capacity. A lot of canned reports built into the reporting section. So I'll start here, show you a few examples. Under the PO invoices received today that have been automatically processed, I will call your attention to one thing here, the percentages next to the values in our notification column. So that is our confidence score. So that's the system letting you know how confident it is that it is the invoice in question is in fact a match to the purchase order in question. So a couple of examples. Perfect match. So 100% match, invoice image in the middle, our header information on the left, and our invoice rows here at the bottom. Browse to my matching tab. We're going to be presented with the invoice details on the left, our PO details on the right, and our matching result or our matching details in the middle. If I put my mouse on one of these, we're able to see the result for that line. So in this case, the order number all the way through the total amount for that line have in fact matched. Same goes for line 1 in this scenario. Go to my coding tab, we see the coding has carried over from the PO, and this would be ready to send to the ERP. So in a production environment, this type of invoice would just bypass this step. You would not have to come in here and hit this button. It would just bypass this step and be sent to the ERP and be posted and ready for payment. Go back, show you one more example here. So while that first example, the data matched perfectly, we also want to assist you with automating examples where the data does not match perfectly. So in this case, if I put my mouse on one of these, we see that the quantity and the unit price is misaligned. So if you are involved with AP on a regular basis, you have probably encountered a unit of measure mismatch. So in this case, what we have, if we look at line 1, we have a quantity of 20 and a unit price of 360 on the invoice, and a quantity of 200 and a unit price of 36 on the purchase order. That being the case, standard unit of measure mismatch, the system recognizes that, which is why it is okay with this type of matching scenario. This is all within your control. This is not something you have to automatically push through. This is an example in our demo environment that would have automatically pushed through, but you do have control over the types of scenarios that go straight through versus the ones that don't. So just to call that out. But that's why in this example, we get an 85% match versus a 100% match. Okay, so again, perfect alignment. Obviously, we can auto process those, but even when data is not perfectly aligned, we want to assist you with those as well. Let's look at a couple here that do require some action from the AP team. We have one here, slight data mismatch. Go to my matching tab. We see that the data is out of alignment. The unit price is a problem. If I put my mouse here, we'll see that we have 3 values that are in fact wrong on that one line. So we want to call your attention to the problem at hand. In this case, it's the unit price, but you can imagine with an invoice that is 40 lines and a PO that's 40 lines, you don't want to have to look through all of this data. You want to know exactly where the problem is. Hence the reason we highlight. So that's why that's here. We're also going to present to you what would have been acceptable. So in this case, 58 to 59 would have been acceptable, but the fact that it's 61 needs to be approved. This type of alert goes for quantity as well. So if we have quantity or pricing issues, you're going to see a very similar alert. Coding tab carries over from the PO, and we'd be ready to send this for approval. So I'll just quickly run through the approval process. This can be auto-populated, so generally on a purchase order-based invoice, this would populate with the user from the PO. So I'll just run you through sending this off really quick. We'll say that Aaron is going to be our approver. We can apply that. The details of the exception get populated for us. We can then send this to Aaron for review. And that gets sent off. Aaron then receives a notification letting him know he needs to deal with that exception. So that's what a validation issue might look like and what that approval will look like. I will show you the approval process here in just a second. In the meantime, let's jump to invoices received today that are with business users. So we have 3 non-PO invoices here at the top that have been assigned out to different users or groups of users, but we notice they're all from Verizon. So non-PO invoice arrives from Verizon. The system is able to, via AI and other configuration, is able to recognize, hey, Verizon for a certain location or for a certain account number or things of that nature needs to go to Aaron. As an AP person, I'm able to open this. I'm able to see that this has automatically been coded. If I look at the approval chain, I can also see that this has been sent to Aaron and it is awaiting Aaron's approval. So if I quickly jump to my email, show you that approval. 1 second. So Aaron receives an email that looks something like this. The details are attached, as well as a copy of the invoice, so that Aaron can actually look at that in more detail if necessary. But if Aaron's comfortable with this, he can simply click on approve from anywhere, from his laptop, from mobile phone, doesn't matter, and that approval will take place. So that's approved and will be ready for the next step. And in this case, that next step would be pushing that to the ERP. So that's what the approval process would look like, whether it's on the non-PO side or on the PO side. If we're on the PO side, approving an exception or something like that. On the non-PO side, obviously just approving the coding and such would look very similar. Moving on to non-PO invoices that require some action from the AP team. So in this case, I go to my coding tab. Since we're just looking at a non-PO invoice, we do not have a matching tab. I'm able to code this manually, so I could add a line here if I wanted to. I won't do that in this example, but I could add a line manually if I just wanted to code this. but more importantly, smart coding. So we talked about AI, we talked about that type of thing. That's where this comes into play. So I can use smart coding to look at past invoices. The system will present me here in the top with what it found. So it says I found 6 cases and most of them have been coded the way it's presenting to me here. So if we're happy with that, we can save that and then we can move on to approval. But just one note here, that smart coding process, while in this case I came in and hit the button, that smart coding can actually be invoked prior to this step. So that can actually be invoked as an invoice arrives. And then in many cases, when you open this screen, this would already be populated for you. It would just be a matter of review. So I'll send this for approval. We showed you how to populate this screen manually a few minutes ago, but we did not show you smart routing. So smart routing, very similar, looks at past invoices. And in this case, all of them have been sent to Chad and to Rob for approval. So I'll just say okay here, and that will be sent off to Chad first and then on to Rob once Chad has approved it. Okay, I think that's what I wanted to show from an example standpoint. Obviously, this is more of an overview type demonstration for the webinar, but we are happy to get into more detail as necessary if anyone has any interest. All right, Garret, I think I'll pass it back to you. 1 second, let me get back to my slides here. Okay.
Good. Thanks, Jason. So I think the result of using the technology, the solution that Jason has shown you drives a lot of touchless processing. So it's reducing the amount of invoices you have to touch, and even those ones where you do have to get involved, it's making that as efficient as possible. And all of that contributes to significantly reducing the cost per invoice. Often when you add together both the platforms and the user time spent on an invoice, it can be as high as $16 an invoice. So what we're looking to do is drive that right down. So the cost to your organization in terms of time spent, etc., can be right down around $250 per invoice. That could be a significant saving to your overall organization. But it's not just the processing time, it's the benefits you get in regards to reduced work in progress, faster, more accurate accruals, all of that good stuff. And just testament to a real life example, Primark are a global retailer of fashion apparel, and they're achieving 98% straight through with their goods for resale invoices. So they have 3 staff processing over 350,000 invoices. That's what can be achieved with the right technology and the right processes in place. Maybe not for every particular organization you get to 98%, but we can certainly get you very close to that with the right approach and the right technology. And I did say, just wanted to talk a little bit about how we use AI, what AI we use. Just to explain, there's a number of different things. At the bottom there, generative models. That's what people are most familiar with regards to ChatGPT. That's been trained on large language models. So it's taken a huge amount of unstructured data, and out of that, if you ask it a question, it uses all of that information to come back with what is usually a pretty credible answer, but it's completely generated. It's creating new data with what it gives back to you. So for something like Copilot, where it can give you suggestions or help you with natural language queries, that's very much appropriate, and that's what we use to drive our help tool and our prompts in terms of being able to use what's in our knowledge base to get you the answers as to what to do. So that's where generative models, I think, are quite appropriate in the finance world. But where it can fall down is if you've got a financial decision to make from a validation point of view, it doesn't give you an insight as to how did it come up with the answer that it gave. It can be very much a black box in that regard. So when it comes to things like how was an invoice matched to a PO, or why did the system assign this particular coding and route it in this particular direction, you want to know exactly how it arrived at that outcome. And that's where we use a number of those other types of AI that you see there. We use rules and heuristics, which is essentially building a model that includes some kind of shortcuts and patterns that help it look at some data and make a quick decision as to how it typically should analyze that data and how it should give you suggestions for what to do. We use that combined with machine learning, so we can train it off of prior data, so we can teach it that with how your previous invoices were matched, how your previous invoices were routed, we can quickly use that to train the system to automate that for you. And we don't necessarily, for matching, for example, we don't need just your invoice data. We've got industry standard models that work from day one without any training just for your organization. We are able to get the most out of it by using things like optimization and simulation. So we're constantly testing, tweaking, changing, and the model is doing that itself automatically with no maintenance needed, so that it's giving you the best automation with regards to the matching output that it gives you, the coding and routing output that it gives you, the data captures that it does. So those are elements of where the AI is giving you results, but it's not generative AI. It's those other types which can give you a full audit explanation as to how they arrived at that outcome. So that's where I think from a finance point of view, from a compliance point of view, you need to have that visibility and certainty that the system isn't going to make random responses to somebody when they ask it a particular question. I heard one story of somebody who was interacting with an AI bot with an airline company recently, and they asked them about their refund policy, which the airline didn't really have a particular refund policy for this particular scenario, but the AI model made it up because based on the data, it kind of seemed like a good suggestion, and the customer got told there was a policy which they went to claim against and didn't exist. That's the kind of danger that generative AI can have if used in the wrong scenarios. So anyway, just a little side note there. But as I said, overall, we use and deploy the appropriate AI, those different types, in the areas to which they're best used for your organization. So I'll leave it at that. We're very happy to talk further with you about your particular challenges, about your particular requirements, your particular questions. We'd love an opportunity to come meet. We're always happy to take what we call the Smart Matching Challenge. You give us your invoice data, your order data, your chart of accounts data, and we'll show you with your examples, with your data, how we can help transform what might be a very manual process at the moment to a very highly automated. Okay, well listen, thank you very much. It's been really great having you along for this session. We hope you found it useful and informative. As I said, we'd very much like to have the opportunity to talk in the future if there's something that you feel we could help your organization with, and would look forward to doing that. I see there's a question there. Do we integrate with NetSuite? Yes, we integrate with NetSuite. NetSuite has a standard API through which we can integrate to pull the data from a coding vendor point of view and then be able to post your invoices back. So we have customers using NetSuite, but we have customers on all of the major ERP brands. Our platform is designed to integrate with the likes of the SAPs, the Oracles, the Infors, the Microsoft Dynamics. From an AP, we're solving very often the same AP problems for those customers, but we need to talk to a different finance system in the background. Okay, well listen, thank you. As I said, thank you very much for your time, and look forward to speaking to you again.